cost South Carolina jobs?
I would say your questions suggest you're very confused about my position. I want to cut money, overseas money. That's what I want to do. I want to cut military money. I don't want to cut defense money. I want to bring the troops home. I'd probably have more bases here at home. We were closing them down in the 1990s and building them overseas. That's how we got into trouble. So we would save a lot more money and have a stronger national defense, and that's what we should do. But to say that we would be weaker is absolutely wrong, because and another important thing you should consider is the fact that the military is behind me more than the others. I get twice as much money from the active military duties than all the other candidates put together. So they're saying that I'm on the right track. They're sick and tired of those wars. They're sick and tired of the nation building and the policing activity. But to say that we would have less money for defense, we actually have more money. And if I may, I'd like to go back to the international financial thing.
Congressman, just to be clear, your plan calls for freezing defense spending at 2006 levels, which is well below where we are today.
You still don't understand.
What's he missing, Congressman?
You don't understand there's a difference between military spending and defense spending. Just because you spend $1 billion on an embassy in Baghdad, bigger than the Vatican, you consider that defense spending. I consider that waste. So military spending, like Eisenhower advised this, watch out for the military-industrial complex. Defend this country. We have to have a strong national defense, but we don't get strength by diluting ourselves in 900 bases, 130 countries. That is where the problem is. But you need to understand that there's a difference between just military spending and defense spending, just to spend money. We understand this domestically. If you spend more money domestically, we know it's wrong, but we're supposed to spend more money, and that's conservative. I've never quite understood this. We're supposed to be conservative, spend less money.
I'd like to...
President Obama said the U.S. asked Iran to give our downed high-tech drone back. As you know, the Iranians have it on display. They claim they are extracting data from it, and they have no intention of giving it back. Yesterday, you called the president's response, quote, extraordinarily weak and timid. Now, in your book, you write, quote, weakness invites challenges, acts of intimidation, acts of aggression, and sometimes war. So in this case, are President Obama's actions inviting war?
Absolutely. Does timidity and weakness invite aggression on the part of other people? Absolutely. A strong America. A strong America is the best ally peace has ever known. This is a president with the spy drone being brought down. He says, pretty please? A foreign policy based on pretty please? You got to be kidding. This is a president who fundamentally believes that this next century is the post-American century. Perhaps it's going to be the Chinese century. He's wrong. It has to be the American century. America has to lead the free world. And the free world has to lead the entire world. The right course under President Obama's plans is to shrink our military, thinking somehow if we appease or accommodate the tyrants of the world, that the world will be safer. He's wrong. The right course for America is to strengthen our economy, our values, our families, and our military. We need to rebuild our Navy and go from 9 ships a year to 15. We need to modernize our Air Force. We need 100,000 new additional troops in our military. We need to take care of our veterans in the way they deserve. It is time for us to recognize once again, a strong military does not create war. A strong America prevents people from trying to test us around the world.
This is what she told the Associated Press. The question was, do you support legalized abortion if a woman has been raped or if she is the victim of incest? What about if a woman's health or life is in danger? Please explain your answer. Back then, you said, I would support laws that include exceptions in cases of rape and incest and when the life of the mother is at risk. So didn't you, when you were running for re-election, do the same thing you've accused Romney of, which is moderating your stance to try to win a Democratic state?
Today, I would support laws that would provide for those exceptions, but I'm not for them. In other words, I support the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment provides exception for rape and incest in the life of the mother. And so, yes, I support laws that provide those exceptions because if we can get those passed, then we need to do that. But
that's not a violation of your pledge that you took here in Iowa?
You I supported the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act. Now, does that ban all abortions? No. But it moves the country in the right direction. And so what I've said in the past consistently is I'll support laws that move the ball forward. That doesn't mean that's my position and that's where I'd like to go, but that's exactly the direction that we need to go.
What was the biggest thing you were wrong about?
Well, it's probably about the issue of abortion and life. I have always opposed abortion. But when I ran for office, I thought, well, I can say and can understand the idea of leaving the law the way it is. The Supreme Court has made its decision. I'm just going to say I'll support the law and preserve the law as it exists. That was somewhat naive, it turns out, because when I became governor, I found that you can't just support it the way it is, that the law changes over time. I had a piece of legislation that came to my desk that would redefine when life began in my state, would also authorize the creation of embryos for the purpose of experimentation and ultimately destroying them. And so I said, look, I am pro-life. I will defend the sanctity of human life. I was wrong.
You vetoed that bill.
I vetoed that bill.
Right. But in the beginning, when you were campaigning in Massachusetts, a very liberal state, you said, look, my personal belief, I'm against it, but I'm not going to legislate against it because Roe v. Wade. You think that was a mistake?
Yeah, I think that was a mistake.
Okay. Now, people might say, well, listen, this is the same old Romney, because if you do in your heart believe that abortion is killing a human being, then you can't really support it, no matter what the law says.
I was simply wrong.
Did you understand the seriousness of aborting a baby in your heart? What was your mindset then?
It's hard to go back into that time frame, but my view was that the Supreme Court had made their decision, that Roe v. Wade had been settled for 25 years, that I was not going to relitigate that. Instead, that I would just say I would support the laws that existed and preserve the rights that existed under the decision of the court. And what I found was that I could not do that.
You couldn't live with it yourself?
I could not live with it. When I was faced with signing a piece of legislation that would authorize the creation and killing of human life, I could not.
You believe in smaller government, but you think government should put a stop to abortion.
I think what I'm most interested in is the recognition of the value of human life. If you don't have high respect for human life, you cannot have respect for liberty. What I don't understand is the argument that says it's the woman's body, she can do whatever she wants. And I, agree with that, except when it comes to another life. I think your house is sacred, too. Nobody should come in your house. No cameras, nothing. But you can't kill your baby in your crib. So there is a limit. So if a baby, the fetus is in the 9th month of pregnancy, viable, perfect, the woman still has the right to pay a doctor to kill it? At the same time, if a young girl has a delivery that she wasn't really much aware of, oh my God, I was pregnant, I had a baby, and she kills the baby, they arrest her. There's something awfully bizarre about it. I want the recognition that human life is something very, very special, and there are strong reasons to believe that the unborn has legal rights. Let me finish.
Sure.
You have inheritance rights. If there's a homicide, that person is held accountable for a homicide. Oh, well, we had an accident. The baby died, but the baby doesn't exist. It's not alive, so it's not a big deal. We'll just do assault and battery, but not a homicide. No, that isn't the case. There's strong evidence that this life exists. So every argument that the left uses or the pro-abortion people use in the early part of pregnancy where it's easy to set aside, it applies to the day before birth. And I say that there's something about this that we should have a lot more respect for life if you want to respect liberty.
And, of course, there are very few abortions.
The principle.
That take place at the end of a woman's pregnancy.
I'm arguing
term.
strictly from principle, the principle of the argument. The principle of the argument is you have a right to your life. It's your body. It's your baby. And I just lost my boyfriend, and he doesn't want it, and I don't want it, and I can't take care of it. I'm going to get rid of it. That's not a civilized approach to society.
That I had is that when Speaker Gingrich was Speaker of the House, he had an opportunity to defund Planned Parenthood, and he chose not to take it. That's a big issue. And also, I think even more troubling, when he was in Washington, D.C., he made an affirmative statement that he would not only support, but he would campaign for Republicans who are in support of the barbaric procedure known as partial birth abortion. I could never do that.
Sometimes Congresswoman Bachmann doesn't get her facts very accurate. I had a 98.5% right to life voting record in 20 years. The only
go ahead.
The only difference was that they didn't like the initial welfare reform bill, which every other conservative group had said had nothing in it on abortion, period. That's the only one in 20 years. I believe that life begins at conception. The conversation we were having, which was an ABC interview, I was frankly thinking about proposing a commission to look at fertility clinics, because I think there is a challenge with what happens to embryos who I think should be regarded as life because by definition they've been conceived. I am against any kind of experimentation on embryos, and I think my position on life actually has been very clear and very consistent.
Let me just
qualify. Are there just some people who won't be able to go to college that want to in a Paul administration?
No, I don't think so. Anybody who's ambitious enough will get to go to college. The problem is college costs too much. And with the good intentions of giving people houses at discount, you know, it ends up with a housing bubble, and the people who are supposed to be helped, they lose their house. Same way with education. The attempt to help people in education, all you do is you don't get better education, you end up actually pushing the price of education up. So we've delivered now hundreds of thousands of students graduating with $1 trillion worth of debt and no jobs. So it's a totally failed policy. Only a generation ago,